Hello, everyone, and welcome to this webinar. I'm Guido, and today I will walk you through the new FlexBI 6.5 version changes. There's going to be some terms you might not understand, but don't worry. I will show you what everything does, how everything works, and hopefully you will also learn a lot today, because I'll try to keep it very basic and explain everything from the start as well. So my role in company, or what I'm doing here, is that I love building reports, complex reports. I love building complex reports. If you ever message me on or us at support@FlexBI, I might be the person who will answer. And if you sign up for the training, I will be your trainer. During the webinar, please, if you have any questions, please leave them in chat. I will try to answer them. And the webinar will be recorded. And we'll later send you the recording as well for reviewing. So today's agenda is that we're going to talk about the non-empty page selection. We'll talk about editing command dashboard page dimensions. And like I said, I explain what everything is, and I'll show you how it works. There are some performance improvements, and there are improvements into the data mapping, and we also added support for ClickHouse database. There's going to be this option as well. So for starters, let's talk about the non-empty page selection. And before we get started, I just wanted to mention that for cloud, this version is already running on cloud, so you can start using all the functionality today. And for enterprise users, you need to upgrade to 6.5 version. Just let us know, and we'll figure out how to go from there. So for cloud users, you might have noticed already that on top of the report here, there's another non-empty button here, right? So previously, there wasn't one available already here, but now there's another one. And it kind of opens up a very nice functionality. So let me show you. So let's get started with what is this non-empty, how it really works, and why is it kind of useful to know, right? So I have set up a example dashboard here where you can see I have some item groups on the rows, and then I have just turnover. So very basic report. And then I have some couple of filters with time, customer, and person. You might notice in this report that there are a lot of empty columns that don't really add any value because there are no numbers, or there's nothing really to see about these item groups. So therefore, they're not really useful in this report. So with the non-empty function, what I can do, I can hide those rows that are not relevant. So basically that have nothing to do with 4th of January, for example. Right? So if I press on non-empty, now the empty rows are hidden. Right? So I will go to table view just to give you another perspective. So there's a lot of empty rows. Some of them have values. And if I click non-empty, the empty ones are hidden. Right? Okay, so that's pretty cool. And like I mentioned, there's a new place or new button available here on top of here in the pages section, right? And the pages section is responsible for the filters in the reports. So if I have selected January 4th in the report and I click on customers, by default, it will just show you every customer that's available in your setup or in your account. But now if I use non-empty and check the customers again, you'll see the list is much smaller. The reason for that is that this non-empty button, it filters or selects only the relevant customers. In this case, the relevance is based on the January 4th, 2020, right? On this time selection here. And the same thing goes for persons. If I go here, then only the people that, are relevant are going to be selected. And it works in a way, the way it works, just to get a little bit more in detail, is that the filter on the left side is going to take the highest priority, or that's going to be what is going to determine the filters on the right. And as we go more and more towards the right side, these are the lowest priority. Meaning, if I change selection here, then this selection doesn't affect those two filters on the left side. But if I change a selection here, for example, then this selection affects the both of them on the right side. And accordingly, if I select a customer, then this affects only the persons on the right side, right? So it just goes from left to right side. And if you want to use this in reports, you can just open up, click on non-empty, and this is useful to have less irrelevant information shown to you when you're filtering your or using your dashboard, right? Pretty cool. So, I see that no questions. Okay. So let's move on. Now, we have made changes or made it easier to edit common dashboard page dimensions. So what is this common dashboard page dimension? So what is this common page filter, right? And the changes to this version is this new section that has made it easier. But let's start with what is this common page filter. So I'm in my dashboard in my demonstration account here, and I have two separate reports, and both of the reports have, let's say, countries filter here, right? So if I come here on this report and I select, let's say, Europe, then this report will update based on Europe. But this one still stays all countries, right? So if I want to have Europe here as well, I have to come and select Europe, right? So if I want to see two different regions in different reports, I can mix and match them. So that's the upside. The downside is that, the downside is that if you have more than two reports, then it's kind of becomes a hassle. Like, you have to click and through all of the filters in order to change all the reports, right? If I want to see information in Europe, I have to change here, and then go through all the reports, right? For that purpose, there's a common page functionality, right? So here I could click and select in the report, but if you notice here, then those two are unclickable, right? So I just try to click and just select, right? But what's happened to these filters is that they're moved on top of the whole dashboard, right? Last year, this one, all persons, this one, right? And the same thing goes for this one, all persons is this one, and customers here, last year here, right? So all the filters have been moved top of the report. And now if I change one of the filters, I select credit customers, then as you can see, credit customers are selected here, they're selected here. And if I scroll down and they're on any other reports, you'll see that all of the reports that have this filter will update, right? So with one click, you can update the whole dashboard, right? So that's the common page. Pretty cool. Now, how to set this up? First of all, you need to have data administrator access, and meaning you need to see this button. If you see this button, you can set this up. Now, if I click on edit, you'll see that there's a couple of more options available, but let's focus on the common page now. As now, here, if you remember that Europe, now if I click this, this will move the selection as a common page. Before that, I want to emphasize that this button will not be available if you don't click here, right? So if I disable this, you see there's no common page button. If I enable this, and now I click here, then now it's available. Very important. So now you'll see that if I click here, the button will move there. And if I change one button here, I don't have data on that. If I change it to Asia, then it updates this report and it updates this report as well, right? So that's how the comment page works. And now the cool thing in the new version about this comment page is that it's way easier to make changes to it. Previously, there was the whole system where you had to open up, like disable it, enable it again, use a specific report for that. Now it's very simple. If you want to make changes, like here, in my time filter, I have a lot of like calculations selected or dynamic members like last 12 months, last three months, previous year, previous month, previous quarter, and so on. And if I click on here, because that's the one that created that, I can see what's my selections. And if I don't want something, I can just disable, boom, boom, disable, or I want to see this month and last month, right? I can make changes, and those changes are reflected, see, this month, last month, and the other ones are gone. Those changes are directly reflected and easier made into the filters or pages. And the same works for all the other ones. Maybe I don't want to see the total. I just want a list of customers. I can click that, and I just have a list of customers, right? So it just works kind of the same as just when doing this in report creation. Just it has specifically set it for a specific dashboard, right? And the cool part, remember the non-empty we talked about previously, that is now available for the dashboard as well, right? So now these page filters, you click non-empty, the same non-empty applies here. And on top of that, there is two more features where I can hide these common page filters. So if I have in all reports there is time, then I don't want to see that. Maybe I want to hide it, make it a little bit more cleaner. I can hide, right? So these are now not visible. They still apply, they still work, but they're just not visible, right? And if I want to, there's another option to hide only when all are selected. For example, if I select, I'll go back here, select all customers. So we have, if I have all customers, the filter doesn't show up. But if I select something specific, then you can see here, the filter shows up. So that if it's general, you don't need to know about it. If you select something specific, then it shows up in the report because then it's relevant. All right, so you can play around this and see what fits best for your reporting. Any questions? Okay. Then the newest version, there are some performance improvements. For Hanzo application, the import runs around 60% faster compared to previous versions, or you can say it's 2 times faster as well if you compare it the other way. I had discussion with my colleague about this. And there's also performance improvements in standard calculations, multiple selections in page filters, and drill throughs. Let me show you what are all of those three. So let's start with the standard calculations. So standard calculations, to access standard calculations, you can click on a column in a report, right? And then there's this add calculate one. And the same thing goes if you click on a visual report on the name of the member, right? So you can access that as well. And now this section gives you options to create calculations on the fly. You don't need to know any MDX. You don't need to go into report. You just click it and something's going to show up. Let me show you. So let's pick statistical and average. Right? So this will show me what's the average turnover over all of these periods. It's kind of green. Let us quickly change the color. Let's trade it to red so we can see it very clearly. And let's quickly change it to a line. And now I can see about where is the average turnover over the selected period that we have in this report. Right? And that's one of the examples. Other things you can do is min, max, median, what's the percentage of total, cumulative. You can see a linear trend, make some calculations so that you can compare it to previous periods, add spark lines to tables, and just empty as 0. Right? So, and these calculations have received performance improvements. Then multiple selections in page filter. I'll refresh the report again. And so by default, so what are the multiple selections, how to access that? So first of all, by default, if I click on something in the filters, let's see, I click on key. I click and the report updates and the key is the selection. But what if I want to have multiple? What if I want to have 3 people? I have my sales team, I'm the manager of my sales team, I want to see how they're doing together, right? So how do I select multiple people? For that, this button is available, right? So by default, this is enabled. But if I click on multiple, then as you can see, I have selected 3 people together. Then I have to click OK. And now you can see there's a 3 people selection there. Right? Now you can select multiple, make these multiple selections, and there has been performance improvement in that. So it just works faster, right? Because people like selecting that, so we made it faster. And the last one are drills. So what's the drill? What's it useful for? Drills are ways you can see the data in more detailed view. And the specific drill that has performance improvements is drill through cell, where if I click on a column that I'm particularly interested, in this case, turnover over February, then if I click on drill through, it's going to give me a list where I can find number of invoices, invoice numbers, and then person codes, customer. And this is very useful if you want to investigate the information, like where is this coming from? What's the invoice? Who invoiced this? So on. You can drill through or find the invoice number, maybe open your ERP system and just find the invoice by the specific invoice number or whatever record you're looking for, a transaction maybe, for example, right? So you open up, look your system, oh, that's the one. Oh, this is what's going on there. I can see it now, right? So you can find the same information that's in Flex BI with this into your own system. So that was the third or fourth performance improvement. Then there has been improvements to source data mapping. So this is a little bit more complex, but let me give you an idea. What is source data mapping? What is it good for? By default, if you're using Flex BI, you're probably using one of our standard applications like HansaWorld or Horizon, Tilde. And the import is quite simple. You just specify where you're going to take data from, and then the data is imported. You can start making reports, right? But there is another way how to do this. That is source data mapping. With this source data mapping, what you can do, you can take any system where you have data that has a REST API connection, that you can export a file from, or that has a database that we can connect to. You can set up a connection to those systems, other systems, and specify how you're going to pull the data in and then make reports on Flex BI, right? For example, if you're using a separate call center, maybe using a separate stock system, you're using Google Analytics for something specific, or like CRM system, different one, right? If you have different systems, you can still pull the information into Flex BI, but there's this source mapping step that you have to do before you can do that, right? For standard systems, we have done this for you, but I mean, this is something that's available. And now, we just made it a little bit more easier, a little bit more advanced, or a little bit more customizable. Let me give you the idea on what's new, because explaining how it works is gonna take a little bit more time. But I'll just explain what's new, so you get an idea what has been improved or what's added. So here's an example. This is just a regular, very, very simple basic report that I made, where I have just turnover, gross profit, item quantity, this little graph, and then 2 tables with customer list and item list, right? And I made this report based on this Excel file. So I took this Excel file that has just like a list of items and list of amounts, quantities, and what's the invoice date, customers, so on. Just a list of data. I've just pulled that into FlexBI, mapped it, and I made these reports. I did that in this source data section in the source files because I used file method. Like I mentioned previously, you can use REST API or SQL connection as well. I just used file. I went to the file section. I previewed. I set all this, and this is what I set up. It's like basically I said, oh, this is going to be this dimension. It's this. The name of that is going to be this, and this is how it's going to work, right? For example, here I said, oh, this is going to be custom item dimension, and the measure is going to be item base amount. This column is going to be this. Just a very basic general idea. Now, what's new or available in new version are the options here. If I click on the dots, then I can, for example, clone a column. If I do that, I'll have the same column, and you might ask, why do you need to clone that? It doesn't make sense. Well, there are some scenarios where you want to import the same column because maybe you want to make two separate dimensions that use the same data. Like maybe you want to use different hierarchies involved. So this makes it very easy. Previously, you had to do it in file. You have to edit the file and manually switch it around. Now you can just do all of it in FlexBI. You can also add a count column. Very simply put, it just adds 1 to every row, right? Previously, I have done the same thing in Excel when trying to map these things because it's very useful. You want to, for example, see how many actually invoices were there or how many rows of items we sold. So you can just click here and now it's available. Previously, I had to do that in file. And the last and the coolest part about this is that you can add calculations or you can use JavaScript to make changes. So here, for example, I will add the new column, calculated column. And let's calculate the cost of sales. Cost of sales. And how we calculate cost of sales, we take the item base amount and we just subtract the gross profit. Those two things that are available here. So don't worry about the details of how it works. It's kind of like a programmer thing. But just to give you an idea, I will say, oh, this column will show this document's item base amount, and it will subtract this document's gross profit base amount. I should have made it shorter, I guess. But here it is. If I click it, add now, it worked. I wrote it correctly. And now I have a new column that's just going to import cost of sales, which is subtraction from turnover or item base amount subtracted by gross profit. So and you can make these calculations. And on top of that, you can use most of the JavaScript functionality. You can make you can change names on everything, do complex calculations, and basically whatever you desire. And this would, for example, be very useful for making names, because you usually want to combine key and name, so you have both of them. Now you don't have to do it in Excel. Now you can just do it in JavaScript, combine key and name, so you have it looking nicely in the reports, for example. Okay, a little bit more advanced, but that's available as well. Okay. And the last topic for today, or the last changes, is that we added support. Kind of just wanted to mention that we added support for ClickHouse database. And you might be wondering we have a database. Everything's working. Everything's working. What's the big deal? So this solution is for niche scenarios where a customer is using enterprise server or is willing to use an enterprise FlexBI version, which is their own server, and the customer has large amounts of data. And by large, I mean a lot of data that slows the reports, right? Because by default, when you're using FlexBI by default, the more data you get, slowly the reports, all of the reports start to work slowly. But you need a lot of data. This is for very, very niche scenarios with very, very big, large amounts of data, right? So when you get the more data, the reports are going to start working slower. And in order to solve this, there is a solution for that, which is using a separate database to execute the reports, where you can execute the reports. And I just want to mention that this is not for customers that have most of the reports, all of them are working, and then there's one report which doesn't work. This is not the solution for that. The solution is the report. This is for customers that have that all of the reports or most of the reports are working not fast enough, let's say, and they want to improve the general speed of just general basic reports. They can set up a separate database for that, move the report execution there, use specifically ClickHouse, and then execute the reports there. And the difference between other databases is just overall speaking that ClickHouse structures the data a little bit differently or executes the queries a little bit differently, where it favors large amounts of data and just makes it work faster. And the cool part about ClickHouse that it's open source. So that's it for me today. Thank you for joining. If you figure out some other questions after the webinar, you're always free to message us at support@FlexBI. We'll try to help you out, answer your questions. And if you want to email ask something me specifically, you can email me at guido@FlexBI. So thank you very much for joining, and bye-bye.